It's AleAuroch now.
It's my rocks.
Woe to you, O earth and sea.
It's the Hop Nation
USA Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children over the age of 21, welcome to the Hop Nation USA Podcast. I am your host, Sam. With me, as always, Steve and Adam. We are here for episode 60. Right?
60.
Yeah, you got it.
Right, I got it right.
Yeah. Well
See,
done.
I'm not on the show all the time, so sometimes I don't even know what episode we're on. I'm like a glorified guest, so I'm glad I got it right. How are you guys doing today? Steve, Adam?
I'm doing well. I can't speak for Steve. I just about did, but I can speak for myself. I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Saw you got a new whip.
I did. I finally got rid of the old car. I got a new one sitting outside. I'm fairly happy with it. And unfortunately, it's already dirty. I've owned it for 4 days and it's already dirty.
You live in Pittsburgh, a doy.
I know. Well, I bought it in Maryland, and within 2 hours it had already rained on it. It had already gone through a giant storm cloud of pollen.
Yeah.
So by the time I got to dinner, it was already the wrong color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Northeast.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
want
was
to change
gonna
that?
say.
Go live in Arizona.
This is just something I'm going to have to deal with.
You're just lucky you haven't popped a tire yet with all these friggin' potholes everywhere. They're terrible.
Ah.
All right, so you're great. You got a new car. You're
Yes.
a car guy, so that's very exciting for you.
Yes, it
Steve,
is.
what's up?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Are you happy to be here?
Yeah.
You're excited?
Well, see, you should probably tell people where here is.
Well, I'm going to get there in
I'm
a
just
minute. I
saying-
just wanted
I'm
to
just
make sure
saying.
you're okay.
I'm happy to be here because here is somewhere different.
Here is somewhere different.
It's not Studio Central.
Right. It's not
AKA
Studio
my
Central.
kitchen.
There you go, Studio Central.
Okay, now enough teasing with this audience here. I'm going to tell everybody where we are today. And we are here at AleAuroch Brewing Company in Emsworth, Pennsylvania, which is a little bit north of Pittsburgh, right off of Ohio River Boulevard. And we are here with one of the co-founders, Doug Foster. Hello, Doug.
Hey, fellas, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. This is fantastic. Now, I'll let you introduce yourself, but for those that don't know, AleAuroch is a true gluten-free brewery. And I know this because I tried to bring Wendy's in here earlier, and I wasn't allowed. I had to actually tailgate the podcast and eat my chicken sandwich in my car. So, true gluten-free. But we are very excited to be here today. This is going to be a great learning experience for the audience as well as us, because I know, at least for myself, I don't know a lot about gluten-free beer. I've never brewed it. I've rarely drank it.
Right. I've had a couple of AleAuroch beers myself, but beyond that, I got nothing.
All right, so Doug, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience here? Tell us who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Doug Foster. I'm one of the owners here at AleAuroch Brewing Company. In accordance with my best friend Ryan, we opened AleAuroch Brewing Company a handful of years ago. Our goal at AleAuroch is to change the way the world experiences gluten-free beer. And for us, that starts with brewing great tasting, naturally gluten-free beer from great tasting, naturally gluten-free grains at our dedicated gluten-free brewery, as we found out. So all of our beers are brewed with millet and quinoa. We also use some buckwheat and have experimented with some better tasting, naturally gluten-free grains. And so when I refer to better tasting grains, I'm comparing that to sorghum, which is a popular grain that is used in gluten-free brewing, but a lot of people find that it has an offensive or undesirable aftertaste. So we try to focus on better tasting, naturally gluten-free grains like millet and quinoa to brew better tasting, naturally gluten-free beer.
Interesting. Millet and quinoa. So quinoa I've had a number of times. Maybe you guys have as well.
Oh, yes.
What is millet?
So millet's actually used, it's a good cover crop to help the soil recover, but it's used as an adjunct in a lot of ancient grain flours or naturally gluten-free flours. It's a good adjunct. It can be used as a flour all on its own to brew millet-based beer, but it's most popular when mixed in with other things, and it's actually found in a lot of birdseed, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Birds like millet.
So, yeah,
I knew we learned something.
brewing for people, for birds.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we cover a lot of territory.
Now, do the birds get to eat the spent grain after you guys are done brewing?
You know, that's a good question. We do offload some of our spent grain, but there are other considerations that we have to take. We actually use a lot of rice hulls in the filtering of our beer, similar to brewing like a Roggen-style beer with a lot of rye. And so it's not the spent grain is not able to be eaten by all sorts of different animals.
It's not just a general purpose.
Right.
Right. It has to be a little more specific. I think maybe bovine or ovine, animals with a little higher tolerance. For example, a lot of people make dog biscuits out of their barley-based spent grains, and we can't do that because the rice hull content's too high and it's not necessarily safe for the
Gotcha.
dogs. So.
Okay.
So basically anything with more than 3 stomachs? Or
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the beer. However, we do have beers that are right in front of us. So, Doug, I'll turn the mic right back over to you, and we'll let you introduce the first beer that we have here in front of us. This is the AleAuroch's Blonde Ale. Give us a little bit of a rundown on this beer, what it is.
Yeah, so the first beer we're drinking today is the AleAuroch's Blonde Ale. We haven't gotten very creative in any of the namings of our beers, so it's basically AleAuroch's, the brewery name, and then the style of beer. And we do that because we want to highlight exactly what people are drinking, but we also want them to focus on the brand and the logo. So everything we brew is catered specifically to anybody who's medically required to follow a gluten-free diet. That said, I'm glad you guys are here. We hope everybody can come and find a beer that they enjoy. We brew about 17 different styles of beer here at AleAuroch's.
Nice.
That said, the blonde that we're drinking is one of our 2 most popular styles, and so all the beers that we brew are very sessionable. They're all 4.5 to 6.5%. The blonde in front of us here is 4.5% ABV. And the reason that we do that is twofold. One, Ryan and I just like sessionable beers, and so it's only natural that we brew sessionable beers. The second is that the extraction of sugars from the millet and the quinoa and the grains that we use is a little more difficult, and it isn't optimized in the way that barley is. And so to get a higher ABV, to have more fermentable sugars available for the yeast to eat, we either have to really jack up our grain bill, and because these grains are more expensive and are not necessarily a commodity grain, that could drive the cost way up. It just makes the brewing process more difficult. And so we found as we become more proficient and our malting company becomes more proficient, we're able to extract more sugar, but our sweet spot still remains in that 4.5 to 6.5% range. And so the blonde ale comes in right at the bottom of that at 4.5%.
Okay.
It is millet and quinoa based. It's all pale millet. And we use some sweet and tart Moroccan orange peel. We also use some coriander and a clean, I believe it's a Chico yeast we're using for the blonde, but I would have to double check. I'm a little rusty on some of the brewing stuff since I haven't been on the production floor in almost a year, I think. So.
Right on.
Awesome.
Well, we've got these poured right in front of us.
Yes, we do.
For those that can't see it right now, number one, that's your fault.
Well,
No, it's not their
it's
fault.
not their fault. It's just they have to get here.
They do have to get here.
But for those of you who haven't seen an AleAuroch's Blonde, it's pretty much just exactly like you would expect of a blonde ale. There's no trick to this. It's a clear, effervescent. It has a nice yellow tinge to it, a bit like a Pabst Blue Ribbon.
I would give it a light straw.
A light straw?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it has a nice color to it.
No, I think it does
yeah.
too. I'm just saying that's what it looks like. It looks like a Pabst Blue Ribbon. I'm not knocking that. I drink Pabst all the time when I'm
Oh, I
bored.
do too. We never knock Pabst on this show.
Yeah.
It's tried and true.
Pabst and Old Style just won at the World Beer Cup. You can't
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. Now, on the nose, definitely can smell some of that sweetness that you were talking about. Some lemony, some citrusy. You said it was brewed with some coriander. I'm getting a couple notes of that as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting those citrus notes.
I can't say anything more. You guys have hit it pretty much perfectly. So I'm not going to add anything else. I'm just going to start drinking this thing.
Well, did you take a sip yet?
I did.
All right. What's your initial assessment here, Adam?
So, full disclosure, this is not my initial assessment. I've actually had this beer before on multiple occasions. The first time I ever had it was at Beers of the Berg 2017. You guys were there. And that was actually the beer that made me go, hey, wait a minute. This isn't just good beer for gluten-free beer. This is just good beer. And I remember having conversations with these guys about it afterwards, like, hey, we need to check these guys out. And
Well, yeah, if you're just going to pull the curtain back, yes, that's why we're here, because this actually just is good beer.
it's just good beer. I'm just gonna rip that Band-Aid right off.
Yeah, we're all here because we've all had AleAurochs before at Beers of the Berg, specifically, and it's all good beer that, like, it's good for being beer. It's not gluten-free beer. That's
It's just good beer that happens to be gluten-free kind of thing. Yeah.
And what I find fascinating too is, and this might just be me, so Doug, correct me if you can pull out a distinction here in this beer versus some other blondes. But if you gave me this beer and you didn't say to me that it was made with quinoa and millet and that it is a true naturally gluten-free beer, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I mean, it tastes like a good blonde ale.
Well, certainly I appreciate that, and that's definitely our intention. In everything that we do, we strive to bring everybody back to the table, and so that people can come together and drink beer with friends, go out, and they don't necessarily have to think twice about being left out of a certain situation or drinking something that's less than. And so everything we do, from the flavor of the beer, which I really am glad to hear that you guys enjoy it, but the fact that it does leave some lacing on the glass, and that the head is nice and light, and that even the brand was the brewery name, everything we chose deliberately because we wanted it to look and act and feel like another craft beer. That said, every single decision we make comes through the lens of brewing a beer that is specifically tailored to anyone who's medically required to follow a gluten-free diet. But we want everybody to enjoy it. It's why we brew a wide range of styles, because we know that people have different tastes, and if you get diagnosed with celiac disease, for example, which is the only thing you can do is follow a gluten-free diet to treat celiac disease, which is the autoimmune element that forces most people to follow a gluten-free diet. If you have celiac disease, maybe you used to drink Green Flash West Coast IPA, or maybe you used to drink one of the great beers brewed down at Grist House, or maybe you used to drink Iron City. And if that's the case, we want to have something that, although it might not be exactly what used to be your favorite beer, something that's in that family. And so that's what got us started on that path. And if it doesn't look, smell, taste, act, feel like a beer, it's not going to scratch that itch. And that's always been our driving force.
Now, I'll continue to toot your horn a little bit more, Doug, but these guys already said like they don't have much experience with gluten-free beers, whereas I've had actually a number of gluten-free beers just because, I don't know, I'm adventurous and I'll drink anything. And I treat my body like...
He's a bit of a drinker. That's what he was going to say.
Well, that, and I treat my body like a garbage dump, so everything from gluten-free beer to grain alcohol has passed through the system. But yeah, I've had...
True expert is what you want.
Exactly. But I've had a number of gluten-free beers, and they all usually come out like thin, and like you already mentioned about the sorghum with the bad aftertaste, they're almost like ciders with bad aftertastes. Or some people try to brew kombucha and trick you that way and call it tea beer, and that's also garbage. but your stuff is like you said, it does everything that you want it to do. It's effervescent. It looks like beer. It tastes like beer. It feels like beer.
It's
beer. It's beer.
It is beer. It's just beer.
Certainly very flattered by that, and we're actually part of a small, pretty tight-knit fraternity of other breweries that are doing what we do. There's It's hard as breweries continue to open, but my last count, I think there were about 7 breweries in the entire world that are brewing with millet, so it's pretty unique.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
that's interesting.
Even fewer brewing with quinoa, and so at least of the ones that we're in contact with in North America, there's some great ones. There's one out of Seattle called Ghostfish, a brewery out of Colorado called Holidaily, another one out of, I believe, Portland called Groundbreaker, and then there's probably the biggest of all the breweries that are brewing in this vein is a brewery called Brassiere Sans Gluten out of Montreal. They sold as Glutenberg in the U.S., but we are a small group of brewers brewing with millet. And so when you look at gluten-free beer, it really comes down to 3 categories. The first is those naturally gluten-free sorghum-based beers. Sorghum process is similar to barley, has a easily fermentable sugar profile, but doesn't taste very good. Then you have these naturally gluten-free breweries that are using millet and quinoa and buckwheat and amaranth and some of these other naturally gluten-free grains. And then there is the gluten-reduced faction, which is using barley and adding a popular brewing enzyme like Clarex or Clarity Firm. And personally feel that over time that'll probably be proven out to be unsafe for anybody medically required. I certainly don't have the science background to break all that down, but at least for me, I was diagnosed with celiac disease when I was 5, and as the listeners can't tell, but you guys can see I haven't missed too many meals. So, I figured that out nutritionally. And so over time, I've seen the landscape evolve from a consumer packaged goods product, from a beer product, most importantly. And the barrier to entry is now great taste. And so what we hope to do, and in partnership with some of these other breweries, or at least in partnership in theory, is to bring great tasting beer to anybody that is interested in drinking it, regardless of your food allergy.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So you mentioned that you were diagnosed with celiac back when you were at 5. I'm sure you weren't ready to drink beer back then, but
no, I was not. Regrettably, I missed out on a lot of good years of beer drinking.
So what kind of drove you? And I guess this is getting into the history of the brewery. What kind of drove you to brewing beer?
Well, so that's a great question. So at the beginning, I mentioned my partner, Ryan. Ryan and I grew up together, went to high school together here in Pittsburgh locally. And so for a long time, I was really the only person that I knew that had celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disorder. And as I was growing up, there started to be a shift. And so there was an increase in diagnosis. And then there was the whole Dr. Oz phenomenon, we like to call it for lack of a better term, in which it just became part of the public consciousness. And then after that, you started to see more people getting diagnosed and more products available. But about 10 years ago, Ryan got really, really, really sick and was having all sorts of different medical issues and complications, which is not uncommon with celiac disease, because celiac disease being autoimmune presents in so many different ways. And so a lot of people have had long, drawn-out, difficult diagnoses and misdiagnoses, and Ryan was no different. So he was medically required to follow a gluten-free diet after his diagnosis about 10 years ago, and we were able to replace a lot of the elements of his diet. But when it came to beer, Ryan had loved and lost. There were so many great barley-based beers out there.
Yeah.
And he had started to explore with some import beers and some different craft beers, and so he was pretty disappointed. And I was telling him, hey, I drink this, or I try some of this, and he looked at me and was like, this is not going to cut it. So so we started homebrewing with sorghum extract batches. Neither one of us had ever homebrewed before, and so as you can imagine, it turned out horrifically. And everything from exploding bottles to dropping glass carboys to just brewing overall terrible beer. And so it did not deter us, thankfully, and we thought, okay, so once we learned how to homebrew and we realized that all the mistakes weren't necessarily our mistakes, we thought if we substituted the sorghum with a better tasting, naturally gluten-free grain, maybe we could brew better beer. And so that's what got us started with this idea and how we ultimately decided to start the brewery. The issue we ran into was that the supply chain didn't exist.
Yeah, I was going to ask is if you guys got started homebrewing, because we're all homebrewers as well. And we all got started on extract kits, but I don't think we've ever seen a sorghum extract.
No.
So, we wouldn't have known where to start.
Yeah, so we had just gotten started in a pretty traditional manner. Although Ryan and I, to this day, have never brewed with barley, so I don't know how unique that makes us across the brewing landscape, having our own brewery and never having brewed with barley. So we still get questions from brewers and homebrewers about certain aspects of the process. And I have to say, candidly, you'll have to talk to one of our brewers, because I only have limited knowledge based on my experience. Right. And so there are certain things that I know better than others, and there are a lot of areas where I'm still extremely novice. So it's always fun to learn something different, even when we brew a new style of beer. It really started me down a path where I was exploring beer in earnest beyond what probably most people's first exposure to beer is, which is light domestics. And,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Look, there's a beer out there for everybody, and there's a place and time for every kind of beer. But I'm enjoying catching up. So
Excellent. Yeah. So that's interesting, and I wanted to maybe you won't know this as much, but I wanted to ask you. We've been talking about the different grains and extract that you're using to make the beer. In terms of the overall brewing bottling process, is there anything else that's drastically different between brewing beer that is naturally gluten-free and other types of beer?
So that's a great question. At first there was, like I said, the supply chain didn't exist. And so years ago we had to malt all of our own grains in Ryan's apartment in Shadyside in downtown Pittsburgh. which was kind of like Breaking Bad, but with mice.
Right.
And was definitely a fire hazard. All of that beer was for homebrew, experimental batches. We weren't serving home malted malt spirit to anybody, but at least it gave us an opportunity to learn a lot more about all the different grains that we were trying, all naturally gluten-free. Thankfully, as we started to grow in the idea and get very serious about starting the brewery, a dedicated gluten-free malting company out of Fort Collins, Colorado called Grouse Malting was starting up. And so we source all of our malts from a dedicated gluten-free malting company called Grouse. And so the biggest difference would be the sourcing and the vetting, for lack of a better term, of ingredients. And so all of our malt is naturally gluten-free from Grouse. All of our yeast is propagated from a molasses-based host or a sorghum-based host. And we're coming up with different ways to experiment with yeast strains, because most liquid yeast is propagated from a barley-based host, and that's not going to work for us. And so all of our ingredients are sourced gluten-free. They come into the brewery. We send everything out for independent testing. To be considered gluten-free, something has to have less than 20 parts per million. The lowest you can test for is 5. And so we don't use any ingredient that tests above 5 parts per million, even if it is under that internationally accepted threshold. And so the sourcing is probably the biggest difference. As we were learning to brew with these different grains, millet's much smaller than barley. So as we were learning, the mash profile has changed drastically. We used to have like an 8-hour step mash that was a total nightmare. We'd have stuck mashes and all sorts of problems. And as we've grown and as it's developed, and in concert with some of the other gluten-free breweries, we've learned a lot more. And through using some different enzymes, we're able to increase our extraction and cut our processing time down pretty dramatically. So what we're doing in the grand scheme of things isn't vastly different than a barley-based brewery. You're breaking down the cell structure of grains to extract sugar to feed those precious yeast that give us the delicious alcohol that we all love to drink. So that process
Thank God
is the
for yeast. That's quite fascinating. And you touched on this earlier, but I got to know, because there might be some listeners out there thinking, yeah, I've tried gluten-free beer before, but there's a difference between what you guys are doing and then what some of the other major breweries are doing with their 1 or 2 maybe gluten-reduced beers. So you mentioned a little bit about that earlier, but I'll ask you to talk about a little bit more about that. What is the big difference between a gluten-free beer and a gluten-reduced beer?
So this is the first time I've ever talked about this on a recorded platform. So anybody smarter than me or with a science background, which I'm assuming includes most of the listening populace,
somebody's got to
might be able to take me to task a little bit. But
You already said you weren't a doctor. It's fine.
Well, I said I wasn't a medical doctor.
No, just say I'm not a doctor.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a doctor. Basically, following a gluten-free diet, you're avoiding lots of things, not only gluten, but you're trying to avoid cross-contamination and different exposures to gluten, which is why you couldn't bring your Wendy's in. And so when you're talking about parts per million, we start, not only do we source all the ingredients gluten-free, but the entire facility here is gluten-free. We don't brew a barley-based beer. We don't brew a gluten-reduced beer. Everything that comes in the facility needs to be gluten-free and is tested. That includes the employee lunches. So we have 6 full-time employees and 8 part-time employees, and only 3 of us have celiac disease, and so everybody else is required to bring a gluten-free lunch, or they have to eat in the car. The only person I've ever had to banish to the car before Sam was my mom, but she knows the rules.
All right,
so.
me and Doug's mom.
Yeah,
we have eaten in the parking lot of AleAuroch. Nobody else has.
So yeah, it's but we take it very seriously. Now, the chance of cross-contamination through a lunch is probably pretty low, but the idea is getting everybody of the mindset that everything we do has to be with anybody's medical best interest in mind. So as far as gluten reduced, the issue is it's a barley based beer, and they're adding a popular brewing enzyme called Clarex or Clarity Firm. And as far as I understand it, the Clarex is used to reduce chill haze and help clarify beers. And so while doing that, it breaks down proteins into smaller parts. And currently, to test for gluten, what is used is it's called an ELISA sandwich test. And I believe, and this is where the lack of science background can get me into trouble, but I believe there's 2 molecules that need to be globbed onto, and as a sandwich test, it traps the protein in the middle like a sandwich. And so when the Clarex or Clarity Firm breaks the protein up, it's not necessarily getting rid of it. It's just making it smaller and so that it's passing the test. And so it's really unclear, and I feel like the research that has been done, at least the studies that I have read, and again, you think I'm bad at science, not a great reader either, but the studies seem limited. And so I know that following a naturally gluten-free diet is the best way for me to maintain my health. And whether you have gluten intolerance or gluten allergy or celiac disease and an autoimmune element, the best thing I can do is naturally follow a gluten-free diet. And if I'm drinking something that has been brewed with a naturally gluten-free mash, I'm in good shape and I have nothing to worry about. So I'd rather do that. People ask, like, hey, if you could take a pill, would you do that? And at this point, like I said, I'm 33. I'm not wasting away. I want to see 50 years of research going into that before I'm willing to do that, because I know it's not as difficult as it was 10 years ago. And so if I can do this and be safe and have a great time and do it safely, I'm going to pursue that naturally gluten-free diet and that naturally gluten-free beer as opposed to gluten-reduced. But at the end of the day, we're all responsible. Food allergies or autoimmune issue or whatever, we're all responsible for what we put in our bodies. So when I go out, I have to make the conscious decision. And I don't begrudge anybody for the decisions they make, but I want to make sure that there's always a naturally gluten-free option.
Sounds great.
Wow.
Adam, this is the first time I've ever gotten a wow response from anybody, so.
Your first wow.
That was... I've got no response to that. That was perfect.
That's like an old school.
Yeah, are you sure?
James Carvel's debating, and then we have no response.
Sure, you never talked about that on a podcast before or on the radio? Did you ever do like the Mark Madden show or something?
Rehearse it in the mirror. Well, I think maybe it's about time we get back to the AleAuroch's Blonde Ale, our first beer of the night.
Well, I never really got away from it. While you guys were talking, if you didn't notice, I was pretty silent during that.
Yeah.
Mostly because I was enjoying this beer.
Okay.
So,
well, why don't you take the time now and give us a little more than 2 words?
I liked it. That's 3. There, we're good.
Yes, asshole.
But no, it like Doug said, this is a very sessionable beer, very drinkable. It's just good. It's light. It's crisp. It's just an easy drinker. And honestly, what else can you ask for in a blonde ale? It's just a good, easy drinker. Bottom line.
Yeah. I'll mention as it warmed up, because while Sam and I were talking, my beer warmed up a little bit, and the taste didn't change too much. It opened up a little bit more, but it didn't turn It's still acting like beer.
Right. Right. It didn't get wild on you.
Right, no, it still acts like beer, even a little bit warmer.
It's behaving.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I'll definitely agree with what you guys said, and this certainly isn't going to be the first time I've mentioned this on the podcast, so for those who have heard our earlier episodes with me, you've heard me say that the blonde style of beer is certainly not my favorite. It's something I'll drink, but generally something I wouldn't pay for. I'm an IPA guy, as we all know, but this beer has a lot of flavor, and I have to say, I'm a sucker for coriander. I just brewed a new homebrew with my buddy, and we did a cardamom wheat, but we also threw some coriander in there for summer. So
nice.
I don't know, we haven't tried it yet, so it may be great, it may suck, but I like coriander. That's the point I'm getting at here.
You just have to believe in yourself,
you can
Sam.
taste it in every sip. There's a ton of flavor in this beer, and I think it's very delicious and great for the summer months. Perfect for a tailgate.
Yeah. You make a very excellent point. This is a good tailgate beer.
Yeah, and like Doug told us earlier, it's not too strong. It's more of a sessionable beer. So what did you say, about 4.5%?
4.5.
So yeah, something you can certainly enjoy over and over.
Oh yes.
All right.
In the summer months.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, that about does it for the AleAuroch's Blonde Ale in segment 1. So stay tuned, Hop Nation. We'll be right back at you in no time with more from AleAuroch's Brewing and the co-founder that's on the show with us today, Doug Foster. So stay tuned.
Check this out. There's a Seattle company called Devore that enables discovery of new and exciting beers and breweries. Devore gets the best independent beer from literally around the world. Denmark, New Zealand, Belgium, and of course everywhere in the US. The app is incredibly simple to use to get some ridiculously good beers delivered right to your door.
Welcome back, Hop Nation. We are here and we are ready to drink some more gluten-free beer. And once again, we are still here at AleAuroch with Doug Foster, one of the co-founders, and we are ready to dive right in to our second beer. So, Doug, what are we going to be drinking next?
So we're drinking the AleAuroch Session IPA. It's also 4.5% like the blonde. It uses pale malt in addition to some of the darker roasts of millet malt that we have. Nothing too dark or too heavy. It's a bronze color, and in addition to that, we use a pretty traditional hop profile with Centennial and Cascade hops. So you've got a little pine, got a little citrus, about 48, I believe, 47, 48 IBU. So it is just a tick above a pale ale, a good introductory IPA for someone that's maybe not into hops, but if you're naturally required to follow a gluten-free diet and you want to try a hoppier beer, this might be a good beer for you.
Well, I have to say, I'm excited. I'm a hophead, love IBAs.
You love IBUs?
I love IBUs, and I love IPAs, so I could not be more excited to try this beer. I know for a fact that I have not had this yet, and I'm anxious to dive right in. So
Well, let's not dive in quite yet.
Well, no, we gotta look at the color, get
Yeah,
the smell. We gotta do the whole rigmarole, but
Rigmarole. That's a 50-cent word. So on the color, it's definitely a little bit darker than the blonde ale. It's I would call it a light copper.
Yeah, definitely light copper.
It's definitely not a VFW beer, where it's got some character to it. Just looking at it, it's got some character to it.
Yeah, it's not as clear as the blonde was, and it's not as effervescent either.
But that's okay.
Yeah,
we still believe in it.
On the nose, it's hops.
yes,
Yeah.
I like the nose. It smells really good.
I appreciate the nose.
For the style, I appreciate.
So, Doug, for your information, I am not an IPA guy whatsoever. I don't know if you picked up on that yet, but if I don't like it, that means it's probably a good IPA.
You hear a lot of Adam saying on the podcast, well, I appreciate it for the style,
That's
and
right.
that usually means he doesn't like it.
I don't want to badmouth it.
All right, so what the hell? Let's jump into this.
Yep.
No, I like that.
Now, what's the IBUs on this one, Doug? Because it doesn't taste too hoppy.
No, it's like I said, it's 47, 48 IBU,
Okay.
so it's not overly hoppy, and so most of the beers that we brew have a pretty moderate hop profile to them. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're very sessionable beers and they're lighter on the palate, and so they don't necessarily have the malt backbone that pairs very well with an extremely hoppy IPA. And so everything that we brew, we do very well with that 40 to 50, maybe sometimes 60 IBU range, where it's moderately hoppy, or sometimes we actually have a lot of popular beers that are dry hopped, or we do something post fermentation or towards the end of fermentation, because it adds a little bit more to the aroma profile of the beer without being extra hoppy. And so because of the light mouthfeel, because of the lower ABV, the conservative hop use is intentional.
Okay. Because I was gonna say you can taste the hops in every sip. They're there, they're pronounced, but at the same time they don't linger around too long. It's not as hoppy as I was expecting.
It does not have that hop residue.
Yeah.
That certain people on this podcast do not appreciate.
Well, what do you think of this beer, Adam?
So what I do like about it is, on the nose, it is very upfront about what it is. It makes no bones about it. This is an IPA. This is going to have hoppiness to it. But also what I like about it is, like you said, this is kind of not necessarily an introductory beer, but it's kind of a stepping stone if you want to get into the pale ale and IPA world. And what I like about that is it kind of eases you into that. It does have that hop flavor, that hop profile, but it doesn't punch you in the mouth. And most importantly, from my perspective, it gets the hell out of the way when it's done. Where it doesn't have that hop residue, it doesn't just stick around, it just has that nasty hop pellet taste to it, which I do not appreciate. Others might, I don't. But I like the fact that it gets in and it gets right back out. And I like that about this beer.
The whole flavor profile of this beer, this seems like a really good gateway into IPAs. It's going to be like, all right, well, you can try it out. You're going to taste some of the hops, see what you think. It's not going to overpower you or anything, but you will get a flavor of what the beer is about.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I like it too. It's balanced, and it doesn't have. Again, you guys both already said it, but it doesn't have that bitter back end. So yeah, it's an easy drinker as compared to trying to dive into a 6-point resin.
Right. Death by hop.
It's so funny you guys bring that up too, because most of my buddies that are into IPAs are really into IPAs, and it's gotten progressively more obsessive for all of them. And so they started with something. Yeah, they start with something that's hoppy, and then it just keeps growing, and they're looking for the most dank and hoppy and different beers they can find out there. And for us, it just doesn't balance well. I think, Steve, you used the term, it doesn't balance necessarily well with the grain bill, and so we think this is the right level. And also we want to brew a beer that anybody can pick up and enjoy. And so if you like to drink IPAs and you used to drink barley-based beers and you've been diagnosed and you're medically required to follow a gluten-free diet, hopefully this scratches that itch. And we do other beers out of the tasting room that are a little bit hoppier, but this tends to be one of our most popular, in addition to the blonde ale, because it does appeal to a wider audience.
Yes.
Cool.
I would agree with that. The fact that all three of us like this beer says a lot.
Yeah.
Very tasty.
So I just wanted to start asking a little bit more. Then you've been mentioning how you brew like 17 different styles, and you're talking about kind of the different things you do at the end of fermentation and stuff. Can you speak more to that? Like, what are your limitations as far as like what kind of adjuncts can you use? Any styles that you can't do?
That's a great question, Steve. So we don't brew a lager, we don't brew a pilsner. I think the cleaner or the more malt dependent styles we've had traditionally less success with, and so anything that involves some spice or some fruit usually is pretty successful. Anything that involves some level of hop is pretty successful, and a lot of the darker roasts of malt really add a lot of different level and character to the beer that we're brewing. But anything that is more maybe traditional or German style, we've had some difficulty with, and so we stick definitely in that ale vein, or what most people know are like the common ales. And so that's really where we tend to focus. That said, we're always experimenting as grouse comes out with new and different malts, and as we become more proficient. And candidly, full disclosure, I haven't brewed in about a year, and so I haven't brewed in a year. Yeah, I know I seem like such an expert, but my business partner Ryan and I both got started home brewing, and then we stepped up to a Sabco Brew Magic, a half barrel system, when we were doing those ridiculously long and mind-numbing step mashes, and then we stepped up to the system that we're brewing on now. But we've also brought on brewers that are more experienced and more talented than we are, and so they've been able to really help take out some of the imperfections and take us to the next level. So I get to focus more on the business side. I still am involved with bottling and some milling and a couple of the other more rudimentary production elements, and I candidly miss being on the production floor. It's great, but there are people that are better than I am, and so they're out there experimenting, doing different things. We brew a New England style IPA that uses a lot of quinoa, where most people would use fleck barley, and that it helps to mimic the style a little bit. And so there's a lot we can do, whether it's dry hopping, whether it's putting interesting things in a randle, whether it's using other naturally gluten-free grains, things that we can do that impact the ABV, impact the mouthfeel, impact the flavor and the aroma. So
Right on. So in that same vein, is there anything that you've ever had to essentially MacGyver on a recipe, where something that nobody has ever done before, and you've kind of had to experiment a little bit until you were able to get it right?
have we ever screwed up and pretended like we did it on purpose? Pretty much all the time. Have we ever done something no one's done before? I don't know.
Okay.
People have been using different ingredients to brew from the dawn of time. Sometimes people ask, like, do we have a patented process? And the answer is no. Mm-hmm. I mean, basically, we historically moved from a nomadic society to an agrarian society, largely in part because of the potable drinking water or liquid that became beer through the fermentation of sugar and grain. And so there's probably nothing we're doing that hasn't been done by somebody over the course of history. That said, we have had to MacGyver plenty of different solutions, from a pen cap, a paper clip, and a beer cap. So there's a lot of different things that we've done.
I certainly hope there was a rubber band involved in there
Oh,
somewhere as
definitely.
well.
At least one. Maybe a whole rubber band ball. Those are really fun. Now, you've mentioned your other brewers a couple times so far on the show, and I have to ask, are they gluten-free as well, or have they brewed a wide range of styles?
No, neither of our brewers are gluten-free, and so both Will and Chris have a background in barley-based brewing, both home brewing and professional, and so they bring a lot of different dynamics to the brewery and different experiences that Ryan and I don't have, especially when it comes to quality control and some of the creativity and thinking outside the box with different ingredients and different additives and adjuncts and all sorts of things that really give the beer its depth. And so we're really lucky to have them. They're really great technical brewers. They're a lot of fun to be around, and they're doing stuff that Ryan and I could have only dreamed of. So it's really cool to have people that are better than you on the brew floor.
Mm-hmm. And that's great that they were able to bring their talents to your brewery as well, because I mean, I'm sure that brings a different perspective to some of the beers, especially having started with barley-based beers and now they're going to brew with millet and quinoa.
Absolutely, and candidly too, Ryan has experience with a lot of different styles. But I mean, we're talking now, we're going on a decade, and so that recollection starts to fade. And so we have outside tasting panels, but to have somebody in here every day that goes home and drinks a variety of different IPAs or a variety of different wheat style beers or blonde ales or browns, porters, everything else, it really helps us hone our quality control and our sensory panels and really make sure that we're brewing beer that we're proud to put out. So
I guess it would also maybe help keep up with like current trends and styles, because if Will and Chris are out there drinking what's popular, they can maybe try to figure out, and again MacGyver their own versions of things. Like you said, you just started brewing a New England IPA, which that's the new hot thing.
Great.
Oh yeah.
that's Steve, another great point. I mean, they're out there, they help us push the envelope. At the same time, we're constantly having to have team meetings with everybody and say, like, let's not forget, here's what we're all about. And it's good to have that kind of yin and yang, or that push and pull, where we want to push the envelope, we want to do something different. But having done this for a couple of years now, I believe that gluten-free brewing is maybe where craft brewing was 20 years ago. And so it's going to, the gluten-free brewers of America. If there's not a trade group, I don't know if I can trademark it.
Yeah, you can do it right here on the show.
sure.
Many people have done it before you. So
Sure.
we trademark all kinds of
That's
things.
right. Nation exclusive.
Yes.
But the gluten-free,
We get a piece.
fair enough. What's 10% of zero? But we're catching up rapidly because of the path blazed by all these other amazing craft breweries, and so the groundwork is laid. But we're still trying to figure out, okay, how do we brew these beers that are quality, that are flavorful? How do we then brew them to style? How do we brew them in a way that's economical and sustainable? How do we push those styles? How do we package them? How do we distribute them? And so all the challenges that have been faced by the industry before us, we're still facing, but we're catching up quicker from a gluten-free brewery perspective. And so it is a good balance, a push and pull between guys with a lot of experience that are starting to follow or want to follow trends, and from a gluten-free brewery perspective, just wanting to put out a quality product. And being able to put beer in a bottle or a can and put it on shelf is a huge victory for a gluten-free consumer. So being able to get it is step one.
So to segue into my next question, what I'm going to ask is, you said you want to make sure that people can get your beer. So for AleAuroch's beer, what are your distribution channels outside of this brewery here in Emsworth, PA? Where would one find your beer?
Yeah, so thankfully that is becoming an easier and easier task. So as we enter spring, we signed a wholesale distributor contract with Frank B. Fuhrer Wholesale, who is an amazing wholesaler here in Western Pennsylvania and known nationally for their efficiency and professionalism and just the great job that they do. And so we're really fortunate and excited to be partnered with them. And they're going to be distributing our beer to 10.5 counties in Western Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very admirable.
That's
huge.
That's their ability to reach 10.5 counties. Before that, we were all self-distributed. So as a Pennsylvania-based brewery, we're able to self-distribute prior to signing a wholesale distributor agreement. And so that was really important to us because we really wanted to get out there and understand the customer in terms of the retailer, your beer distributor, your bar, your restaurant, your grocery store. And we also wanted to understand the consumer and make sure that we were hearing from people, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, because it's really easy for us to get caught up in our own assumptions about what gluten-free beer should be like or what the experience for a gluten-free beer drinker is like. But there are a lot of people out there that are having an experience, and so we want to hear from them and make sure that we're meeting their needs. And on top of that, we just want to brew great beer that everybody can enjoy. So it's important that we're talking to a lot of different people to get their input.
So with that in mind, is there anything that you have planned in the future? Are there any sort of moonshot beers in terms of, you've got a picture up on the mirror when you get up every morning and it's underlined with one day kind of thing?
That's a great question. I think it probably varies within the brewery depending on who you talk to. And so honestly, for me, the first part was the first milestone or the first hurdle was just being able to enjoy a beer and sit down with friends and have something that I was proud of, that I could share, that was really flavorful, that I wanted to have another. And another. Steve, you said you'll drink anything. I totally understand. But isn't it a lot better when you can drink something that you're looking forward to? And so,
yes, it is.
Yeah, and that was our first hurdle. The second one was being able to get it in a way that didn't disrupt my schedule. And so we're in about 125 different retail locations in Western Pennsylvania, but about another 20 in Philadelphia.
Really? You guys are out in Philadelphia as well?
So we self-distributed to about 125 accounts in Western Pennsylvania and about 20 in Philadelphia. We've signed with wholesalers in Western Pennsylvania like Fuhrer, and then we're signing with a wholesaler called Shangy's in Eastern Pennsylvania, and that'll cover most of the state for us. So hopefully people will be able to find their beer at their favorite places throughout the state. But before that, we were just self-distributing. It really gave us an opportunity to meet with customers and really learn what they were interested in and cut our teeth and make our own mistakes without having to be accountable to another partner. And we think we're probably better for it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. That's cool. We haven't really mentioned it, but so far the two beers we've had, the Blonde and the Session IPA, both came in bottles. So obviously those two you can find out in the wild. Is there anything? What else would drinkers be able to look for? Cans or bottle-wise? So
that's a great question. Right now, our Blonde Ale, the AleAuroch's Blonde Ale and the AleAuroch Session IPA are available in 12-ounce bottles by the 4-pack, by the case, or obviously individually at a bar or restaurant. We are going to be releasing the AleAuroch's Amber Ale later this summer, probably in the August, maybe September timeframe, and the Porter later this fall. We do plan on switching to 12-ounce cans. It is something that we feel really allows us to take the beer anywhere. And so there's only certain places you can take glass bottles, but cans can go anywhere. And we just think that really fits with what we're into personally and what a lot of the people that like to drink our beer are into. And so we're going to make that transition. But by the 4-pack, the Blonde and the Session are available in most of those retail locations.
Now, why did you guys decide to go with the 12-ounce cans? Because the trend seems to be for, these microbreweries, nano breweries, they are canning, but they are all going with the pint. The 16-ounce can, the tall boy, the pounder. Not the tall boy, that's 24 ounces.
Sam, that's a good question, too. And so we don't have any canning equipment on site, so no decision has been made official. Okay. Until you have the equipment in the facility, nothing is a done deal. That said, we do have a dual head Maheen 12-ounce bottle filler, and everything that we do is grain to we like to say grain to glass gluten-free. And so it's sourced gluten-free, it's produced gluten-free, it's all tested, and then we package in-house that eliminates the risk of cross-contamination. And so picking cans, it makes a lot more sense because the economics of what we do are a little bit different. We're talking about more limited, more difficult to source ingredients, extra testing processes, and that itself creates a different cost structure. And so with that, there are other considerations like how are we packaging the beer. Bottles tend to be a little more expensive to produce than cans, and now with the with the progress that's been made in terms of can quality, probably the best beer you can get is in cans because there is no light. You're not having any of those weird off flavors that are imparted by the aluminum. And so the reason we chose the 12 ounce, well, we've had a long and illustrious history in terms of picking different packaging. And so when we first got started, we were actually bottling everything in 22-ounce bombers.
I remember those days.
Yeah. So, bombers are great for the beer drinker, but if you're newly gluten-free or maybe you're just coming back to beer because you've been drinking wine for a long time and there are finally some beers that you might be interested in, a 22-ounce bomber, especially at a bar or restaurant, is a pretty big investment.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're committed.
Right. And so the 12-ounce cans, the 12-ounce bottles, hopefully the 12-ounce cans, just seem to fit everywhere. And so I know 16-ouncers work at stadiums and dedicated bottle shops and places that have a pretty dedicated craft beer following, but as much as we hope that we can appeal to the craft beer drinker, we want to make sure that we appeal to everybody. And so 12 ounce just seems to make the most sense. It allows us to price it in a way that we think is competitive. We want to be superior on taste and competitive on price. And so as much as I don't like to talk about it when I'm talking beer, it is a consideration. So, everything from production to finance to sales just kind of pointed to the 12-ounce can. So not the sexiest answer, but...
No, I mean, that makes sense. I was just curious because everybody's going with the pounders, and not that there's anything right or wrong with that. It just seems to be what everybody's doing.
So, Sam, the worst thing you have to do is just drink 2.
I know, right? Exactly. It'll make a cooler wizard staff when I duct tape them all together, because there'll be more cans in there. Maybe I could even mix in a few other 12-ounces, get some variety in my staff.
All right.
I don't know where to go from here, I'll be honest.
I think
Maybe back to the beer.
Yeah, I think it's just easy to say, well, we can look forward to the session IPA in cans, hopefully.
Yes, we can.
But for now, we have it in our glasses.
And available in bottles.
Yeah, and it's available in bottles now. So, final thoughts? Adam, we'll start with you, Mr. I Don't Like IPAs.
So, I don't like IPAs, I'll be perfectly honest. I said that pretty much every episode that we've ever had an IPA on the show. I'm not breaking new ground with that information.
No.
But again, like I said earlier, what I like about this, it announces what it is, it does what it needs to do, and it gets the hell out of the way. It doesn't have that hop residue or anything like that. It doesn't, stick around. It's not the last to leave the party when everybody else wants to go to bed. But they say, no, just one more round of Mario Party. It'll be fine.
Why are you staring so intently at Sam like that?
Hint, hint.
There's always time for one more, Adam. You only live once.
But no, it's a good beer. In like what Doug said, it's an introductory beer. If you haven't been into that pale ale IPA world before, this is a good way to come into it. And I do appreciate that. I'm going to kick it over to one of you two guys that actually know what you're talking about when it comes to IPAs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, as someone who can truly appreciate the style as I drink, very hoppy IPAs, lighter session IPAs, and everything in between. I really do enjoy this beer. It's got a nice flavor, but then it dissipates a little bit, and it leaves me wanting more, which is great because, generally in a glass, I'm sipping about 1 ounce at a time. So I got 12 sips before I got to crack another one, and that's very exciting to me that I'm always wanting another, and it's not too overpowering. And once again, just like the blonde, this is 4.5%. It's a session beer, so you can take it on. You can take it to a tailgate. You can, after you mow the lawn, you can sit on your back porch and enjoy one, and still be able to drive to dinner later on. It's a nice, refreshing beer. And you can't always say that IPAs are refreshing. I mean, you can't. Even I can say that. And sometimes I like that, trust me. Sometimes I'm not looking for refreshing. But at the same time, this one is. And the lower hop profile is it works very well. It's a very balanced beer.
Yeah.
So I'll just say this is the complete opposite of the Founders Dank Wood.
I haven't had that one yet.
Well, you're going to like it, Sam.
Oh, really?
Because it's like somebody scissor kicked you in the mouth with hops. This is... That beer is a 12% bourbon barrel aged IPA nightmare. Now, I liked it, and I know you'll like it. Not everybody would like it. But that's exactly, Adam. But that is so far to the other extreme of what this beer is. This beer is everything Sam already said. It's a nice, refreshing, easy drinker. I think of it as a lunchtime beer. You just sit down with like a nice, sandwich or whatever. I mean, or whatever people with gluten intolerance would eat. I know you don't do sandwiches.
I can speak from experience. I've had this beer for lunch multiple times. And it's definitely fits the bill.
Sometimes you don't even need a sandwich or any food. Just drink beer.
Right. But yeah, I like it that way. It's nice and refreshing in that sense.
And that's not all for you, Hop Nation, because that's only 2 beers. And in this show, we drink 3 beers. So stay tuned. We are going to be back in just a flash with Doug and one more AleAuroch beer. We'll see you soon.
Should you eat that cake in the break room?
What makes the ultimate office pet?
Is the shuffling from the next bathroom stall a demonic rite, or something far worse?
On the Work-Life and Balance podcast, you can find terrible answers to some of your most uncomfortable questions.
Whether it's coming to work with late-stage syphilis,
or staying on trend with pants full of angry raccoons.
I'm Frank Eastman.
And I'm Derek Lewis.
2 guys who ought to know better on work-life imbalance.
Find us at WLIcast.com, on iTunes, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
All right, Hop Nation, we are back here. AleAuroch Brewing, the owner, Doug Foster, and that means with segment 3 comes one more tasty beverage. So we're going to be trying one more AleAuroch beer here on the show today. And Doug, why don't you tell us what we're going to be drinking last?
Yeah, so this is our amber ale. Most of the flavors driven by the different roasts of malt that we use. The malts that we use that make us unique are the millet and the quinoa malts, but it's all pale malt. The flavored malts or the different roasted malts are all quinoa, and so we use a couple of different medium and crystal malts that not only give it the darker color, but give it more of the caramel biscuit flavor that you get. And so it's a standard hop, it's a clean yeast, and most of that flavor, like I said, is driven from the malt, which is kind of unique because a lot of the times the malts we're using are there for a base, and so we use hops and yeast and additives and fruits and spices to really drive the flavor, and this is one of our most malt driven beers.
Well, it looks very pretty in the glass, I will say that. I love the color of this beer. It's very caramely. I like the biscuit description.
I think you could just
biscuit
call it.
Really isn't a color.
I think you
get that on the taste.
Call it amber. I mean,
I know, but I want to be a little more descriptive.
Sometimes simplicity.
Fine, it's Yingling. Let's drink it.
Oh,
The one thing I will remark about the color is, as you kind of bend the light against it, it has that interesting, it's like a characteristic I haven't really seen that much, where it goes from dark to almost a lighter, like almost back to the blonde color at the edge. You just kind of bend it against the light.
I really want to make a bend it like Beckham joke right here, but I know that that's lowbrow humor, and I won't do it.
It's not lowbrow humor, it's just nobody cares. Didn't Bend It Like Beckham come out when you graduated from high school, old man?
Yeah, what was that? 1992?
Back in my day,
When Keira Knightley was like 1.
we respected our elders. So back to this beer at hand.
Yeah.
On the nose, it's an amber ale. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean it has a nice malty smell to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do get some of that caramel flavor, like just up in the nose. So yeah, and it differentiates itself from the last 2 beers, so that's good too.
We've definitely had 3 unique beers here on the show.
Yeah.
At 5.5% too, it's like it falls into the profile of sessionable and drinkable and an approachable version of the style, which is something that we try to accomplish with everything that we're brewing. And so it's actually, if it's not our most popular, it's one of our most popular, and we look forward to releasing this in cans or bottles, depending on how the timeline falls, sometime later this summer, because it is something that a lot of people that have stopped by the tasting room have requested, because it covers a lot of ground. Like you guys said, it's caramely, it's biscuity, and it's just a beer that I like to drink during any occasion.
Excellent. Well, shall we drink?
Yeah.
Shall we taste?
Cheers. Yeah, sure. Let's taste it.
Let us actually taste this beer.
So that is a very smooth drinker. There is no doubt about that one. That one is a That's one that you just sit back, relax. This is a back porch beer. This is a good, Tuesday evening, the sun's going down, you crack one of these, and just relax. That's what this kind of beer is.
See, what's challenging about this beer is that we've pretty much said the same thing about the last two beers. So if you're really only going to have one on your back porch, it's going to make a very challenging decision to decide which one of these you want.
Yeah. I find that to
they're all great drinkers.
Yeah, that's good problems.
But I like the malty, the roasty flavor of this beer. It's very well balanced. It's not overpowering. 5.5%. I think that's a little bit stronger than a Yingling. So I mean that's nice. Get a little higher ABV in there, but you don't taste any of it. It's still very, very sessionable, very drinkable. I like it.
Steve, thoughts?
So, I am happy to report it does pass my is it better than a Yingling test.
And that's really saying something, because I mean, you are like the Yingling connoisseur of anybody on this podcast. If there's one person that loves Yingling, we know it's you.
You misspoke despises, but I'll just give you... yeah, I'm not a fan of Yingling, my dude.
I don't know how you didn't pick up on that earlier.
Yeah, sorry if that's been gone over.
It's not that I don't pick up on it, it's I refuse to believe it.
You refuse to believe anybody in Pennsylvania hates Yingling.
Yes, exactly. That is correct.
But yeah, no, I find this a lot easier to drink. It's a lot smoother, and it's a lot more balanced than Yingling. Mm-hmm. I like it better than that.
It's just a good beer.
I'm the way Adam's not a fan of IPAs. I'm not the biggest fan of lagers and ambers, but I would definitely choose this over the favorite.
Yes.
Okay. Well, without further ado, while we enjoy this amber beer from AleAuroch, we are going to get into the moment that we have all been waiting for.
We have.
The audience doesn't even know they've been waiting for it, but they have been waiting for it because Sam is bringing back the quiz show. Now, I have to say, this is not going to be an Eye of the Hurricane quiz.
Thank God.
We're not going to be chugging any Hurricane on this show. We're not going to be chugging any beer. But we are going to get into a really great quiz that may or may not be centered around gluten-free food, beer, and other things.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So here's what we're gonna do. I got 10 questions here, and this is also going to be educational for the audience. We're gonna learn a thing or two together while we're quizzing everybody.
Would you say this is edutainment?
I would say it's edutainment. It's the edutaining quiz.
Okay.
So Steve and Adam and Doug are going to be our participants here, and it's going to be pretty simple. 10 questions. Whoever gets the most answers correct is going to be deemed the winner and master of the universe for.
Ooh.
So.
Or you could just say the master of episode 60.
Okay. The master of Ohio River Boulevard. The master of Emsworth, Pennsylvania.
That is my boulevard.
Alright, so as I mentioned, the rules are simple. 10 questions. We're going to go around the horn here, starting with our guest, Doug. And if you get the question right, you're going to get 2 points. If you get the question wrong, the other 2 participants are going to get an opportunity to steal. And the highest point total at the end will be declared the winner.
Sounds good.
Let's make this happen.
It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah. Onward.
Okay, so these questions are in no particular order at all. But Doug, you get the first one. And I'm going to start with what I believe is a semi-easy question. But I made the quiz and I know all the answers, so they're all easy for me. Alright, which of the following breweries does not make a gluten-free beer? Dogfish Head, Stone, Coors, or Epic?
That's a great question. And so the answer is Epic. But Dogfish Head makes a beer called Tweezin that is a sorghum-based beer. Coors had a limited release beer that was made with pea protein called Golden Peak. And Stone makes a gluten-reduced beer. So if you're asking a purist, the answer is Epic and Stone. But if you're asking someone that just considers gluten-free and gluten-reduced the same, the answer is Epic. That was the worst nerd answer. I'm sorry. That was just terrible.
So I just got to say, Steve, we are screwed.
Sure.
We are so screwed.
Guys, I have a home field advantage here.
Now hold on here, though, 1 second. Now I said does not make a gluten-free beer. So Stone is gluten-reduced.
Epic makes a gluten-free beer.
They do.
Wow, this is very embarrassing.
And so does Dogfish Head, and Coors Peak is gluten-free as well.
Wow.
So you actually did not get the question correct.
That was...
And these folks aren't going to get a chance to steal.
I was so confident in my answer.
And you even said it.
Awful. This is really not going to
But you have to understand,
well.
the trick with this question was gluten-free, whereas Stone does their delicious.
What is the name of
Epic's
Epic's gluten-free beer?
The Glutenator. Epic makes one called the Glutenator, which is 100% gluten-free.
And I learned something today.
Everyone's learned something, so nobody got a chance to steal on that.
No, wow. Steve,
I love the confidence, and it was kind of a trick question. Maybe I shouldn't have said it was so easy, but sorry, Doug, but you're going to get another one here in just 3 turns.
I'm still convinced that we're screwed, Steve.
Did you study?
No.
Well, then you might just be screwed.
Okay. So here you go, Adam. Well, this one's probably going to be a crapshoot for you, but
Okay.
we're going to ask it to you anyhow.
I will roll the dice. Let's see what happens.
Which of the following athletes is truly gluten-free?
Okay.
Peyton Manning, Serena Williams, Drew Brees, or Dale Earnhardt Jr.?
So when you say gluten-free, is that by choice?
No.
Or okay,
Not by
all right,
choice.
I'm just making sure. Just making sure. So I really hope it's not Peyton Manning because he owns like 35 Papa John's.
He's a businessman, though.
The answer is not Epic. I can tell you that with confidence now.
So I'm going to go with Drew Brees.
And you would be correct. Very good job. So 2 points for Adam and no opportunity to steal.
Bada bing.
Okay. Steve, wheat germ is something that should be avoided if you are gluten intolerant. The question is, what is a wheat germ? The part of wheat that sprouts and grows into a new plant, a good source of vitamin B that grows from the plant's roots, an ingredient found in common face washes that should be avoided, or the skin of a grain. What is wheat germ?
Like, if I did an A and B, is that an acceptable thing? I'm trying to feel you out.
There's one true answer.
Well, you said that on question 1, and we said, see how that turned out.
Well,
I had one answer for it.
he was right. He had one answer.
He was right.
As good as Doug's arguments were,
And his confidence that he had.
it was not epic.
Just act like you're supposed to be. No one's going to say it.
You can buffalo a lot of people, but Sam is not one of them. I'm going to go with A.
You are correct.
Yeah.
The wheat germ is the part of the wheat that sprouts and grows into a new plant.
That's what I thought. So if we want to check the scores real quick, it's it's Steve with 2 points, Adam with 2 points, and gluten intolerant Doug with no points.
This is no holds barred trivia here, Doug.
Look, I want to get that out of the way real quick because I feel like we're still going to lose.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get smoked.
I'm hustling you guys. This is like the color of money. Next round's double or nothing.
All right. Well, you were up then, my friend.
9-ball? What's 9-ball? I can play that game.
All right, so here's your question, Doug. Listen to the whole question here. Soak this in.
I'm so embarrassed.
I know you are. That's why I want to make sure you got the whole question this time. All right. If a product is labeled wheat-free, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's gluten-free. What ingredient may it still potentially contain? A, corn, B, spelt, C, buckwheat, or D, sorghum?
It is spelled.
And you are correct. You are on the board with 2 points.
Just happy to be here, guys.
Now, as someone who went to the World Wide Web for most of these questions, I don't even know if I know what the hell spelt is, but that is absolutely the right answer.
It's not corn. It's not sorghum.
And it's not buckwheat. Alrighty, Adam, you are up next.
Let's make this happen.
Okay. So we're gonna throw you a little bit of a curveball here.
All right.
And this doesn't have to do a lot with being gluten-free, but more around being vegan-friendly.
Oh boy,
So
you picked
the
the
only-
wrong guy.
The only reason I was at trivia on Monday and I heard this question, and I thought it might be appropriate for this.
Okay, gee, thanks for the invite, by the way.
Was this trivia at the Corner Pub?
It was?
See, it's a fun plug to Corner Pub real quick. That's
Yes,
right.
let's plug them real quick. All right, which one of these cookies is not vegan-friendly?
Okay.
A, Thin Mints, B, Oreos, C, Nutter Butters, or D, Chips Ahoy?
are not vegan friendly.
Not vegan friendly. So 3 of these cookies are vegan friendly.
Yeah,
One is not.
I know for a fact that Oreos are vegan friendly. I know that to be true. Don't ask me why I know that.
It might be true.
Because there's nothing but chemicals in them. It's hard to get something from an animal when it's all grown in a lab.
Put strychnine in Oreos.
All right, you're stalling here.
I am.
No time limit, but
I feel that the Girl Scouts are trying to be all-inclusive, so I feel that would be vegan-friendly. So it comes down to the Nutter Butter, and it comes down to the Chips Ahoy. And I feel that Chips Ahoy, they would kind of just sort of stumble into that sort of thing. Just like they didn't plan it. It's going to happen. So I gotta go with Nutter Butter. Final answer.
Alrighty, and that would be incorrect. Nutter Butters are not vegan, they are vegan friendly.
So it goes to me for the steal, and I'm going to say it is the Girl Scout cookies that aren't vegan friendly. Everything else is made by a giant conglomerate, and I think by the same company. So I'm going to go Girl Scouts in that they don't care about vegan diets.
Okay. Now, Doug, you're going to get the chance. You're going to get a 50-50 chance to take the lead here because Thin Mints is in fact incorrect.
I don't want to appear confident because that made me look like an absolute idiot beforehand. But I think that Chips Ahoy are not vegan friendly because chocolate chips have chocolate, which has milk, which is not vegan friendly.
You are correct. Chips Ahoy.
That's like
not vegan friendly.
That's like 6 degrees of Kevin almond milk.
Well, you should celebrate because you are in the lead, Doug. 3 points to 2-2, and this question goes to Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here is a whiskey question for you.
Whiskey question.
Which of the following whiskeys are gluten-free? Jack Daniels, Jameson, Wild Turkey, Maker's Mark, or all whiskeys are gluten-free? I know.
See,
tough one.
Jack Daniels, Jim Beam.
No. Jack Daniels, Jameson, Wild
Jameson.
Turkey, Maker's Mark.
Or
all whiskeys are gluten-free.
I heard Jim Beam, not Jameson. I'm gonna go with Jameson, my dude.
Well, then you would be wrong.
Damn it.
And so, we are moving over to Doug to steal. So we know Jameson is not the right answer. You got Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, Maker's Mark, or all whiskeys are gluten-free.
Are you guys ready for the most unsatisfying part of this entire podcast?
Yes.
So, this is where I have to, or at least to my current knowledge, get as technical as possible. Beer, it's pretty cut and dry. You have naturally gluten-free ingredients, you have barley-based beer, and then you have your gluten-reduced beers in the middle that are being debated. Wine is grape-based, so it's naturally gluten-free. Most liquors, it's complicated. So a lot of them have a barley-based or wheat-based mash, but the gluten protein is supposed to be less volatile than the alcohol distillate. So during the distillation process, it's supposed to make anything gluten-free. I don't know enough about the science behind it, but there's also a risk of cross-contamination. And so if anybody is trying to stick to the strictest letter of the law, anything with a naturally gluten-free mash is gluten-free. But I do believe Maker's Mark makes a gluten-free claim.
And from what I found, they do not. They do not. Now we could look that up.
I'm very bad at this game.
we can look that up. And that was a great explanation. So maybe you get a half a point for that.
I feel like I just gave him a point just for that explanation.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I was going to give a little explanation myself after this, and that was pretty much going to be it. So give him a half a point. So
okay.
maybe give him one.
I'm really sorry, Sam. To be fair, I ruin everything.
Once again, we're going to the World Wide Web here, so I could have factually inaccurate information, because contrary to popular belief, not everything on the internet is true.
Nobody lies on the internet.
All right, we're done with that question.
Oh, we are?
We are. Adam's not getting a chance
ruined
to
the
steal.
game.
Here's why. No, I mean, exactly what you said is correct, and it's in line with whatever website I found this on, but all whiskeys are somewhat known to be gluten-free, and this is why I'm going to give you a point anyhow, is because, as you said, through the distilling process, the gluten is supposed to be minimalized or sucked right out, for lack of a better term. You said it much better than me, but
perhaps it's distilled out.
For the folks that do have the celiac disease, they tend to shy away from, some of the whiskeys just in case. With the distilling process and when they're making it, it might not be truly gluten-free.
I'll take the pity point. I'm not above
You get the pity point. I've been to Maker's Mark, and if this ain't consolation, been there, I've taken the tour, and I didn't hear them talk about making gluten-free whiskey. Maybe I was just too drunk. Who knows?
So what's the answer?
It's all whiskeys are gluten-free.
Oh, it's
That's
all whiskeys.
the answer,
Okay.
yes. It was another trick question of sorts.
Okay.
So
Okay.
give Doug a half point, but then
Yeah.
round it up.
Right.
All right. What is the name of New Belgium's gluten-reduced beer? Is it A, Gluttony, B, the Voodoo Glute Hop, C, the 1554, or D, they do not currently have a gluten-reduced beer?
A.
All right. You said it with confidence, and I'm confident that you are correct. It is the Gluttony. Good job.
Wouldn't it be the gluttony?
Yeah, you're probably right. Give yourself 1/10 of a point for that.
And then
I mean,
round
actually,
down.
I believe on the label it says they have a mutiny against gluttony,
Yeah.
or a mutiny against gluten. Am I doing
Something like
it?
that.
Oh no, I think you're right.
That's really good marketing.
It is good marketing, and the label's badass too.
Yeah, it's like a pirate. So it's supposed to be mutiny, but gluttony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Word puns. Happens in the beer world.
All right, few
All the
more
time.
questions here. Scores are currently Doug at 6, Steve at 2 1/10, and Adam at 2.
I'm
Adam-
losing by a 10th. How is
Adam-
that possible?
Adam's coming back with this one because I think you're gonna get this.
You
It's
don't know
another
me.
it's another brewery question.
Let's make this happen.
All right, this is probably the easiest question on this quiz, so
Damn
you're
it.
welcome. What is the name of Anheuser-Busch's gluten-free beer?
Okay.
A, Green Chair, B, Red Bridge, C, Yellow Sun, D, Blue Sky.
It is Red Bridge.
And you are correct. You are correct.
Give it
Gotta
a-
have a couple easy ones in there.
If I'm going to continue with my buzzkill trend,
By all means.
technically, you're absolutely right. It is Red Bridge. God, I already hate myself for saying technically there. That's like the nerdiest. Like I'm just gonna put my. I believe has some kind of controlling stake in the Craft Beer Alliance, which owns like Kona and Widmer and all that.
okay.
So Widmer has a beer called Omission, which is a gluten-free beer as well. So technically, God, I keep doing this. So technically, Anheuser-Busch owns Omission and Red Bridge. Please don't have me back.
No, that's great supporting information for the question. But Omission does not make a Green Chair, Yellow Sun, or Blue Sky. So love the
I'm sorry.
enthusiasm.
Sam,
to,
you did a lot of hard work, and I'm.
No, I did because most of these beers I don't drink. All right, Steve. What % of people have celiac disease? Of all people, 1%, 5%, 7%, or 10%?
I'm going to go with 7%.
And you are gonna be wrong. So hopefully that 1/10 of a point comes in handy. Oh man, this quiz is getting heated.
The actual, I believe.
Actually.
God, I'm the worst. It's 1% of the population has celiac disease, the autoimmune disorder. There is an additional percentage that has a gluten intolerance or an allergy, and there's more being
More discovered every day.
Jot the points down
There's
for
more
Doug. He is
being
right.
discovered every day. I really hate myself right now.
Nope, you are correct. 1% of the population. 1 in 10.
Give that man his point.
Yeah, you got his point.
Please, I
Okay. I'm gonna
feel
get
much shame.
now to make up for that first question, Doug. I'm gonna completely bend the rules of this next one, and you are going to get a bonus point if you can answer this without me giving the options.
Ooh.
Okay.
Because he needs more points.
Right. He's only ahead by what, 3 or 4? All right. What does the acronym PWAG stand for? Now the question's still coming to you if I have to read the answers, but you get a bonus point.
PWAG.
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 It is a real acronym.
Yeah,
Can I steal that one?
I feel like it's
You know
something processed with something processed without processed with gluten.
Oh, gluten.
I tell you you are close, but you're not. All right, so you can still get the 2 points here if you get the right answer. So PWAG, the acronym, stands for A, people with celiac disease avoiding gluten, B, people without celiac disease avoiding gluten, C, persons who assess gluten intolerance, or D, persons who alienate gluten-free beers. People with celiac disease avoiding gluten, people without celiac disease avoiding gluten, persons who assess gluten intolerance, and persons who alienate gluten-free beers.
Ricky Vaughn's throwing the haters over here.
Give him the Terminator, Rick.
And I didn't even realize...
If you hit it, you can name it.
This is the last question, so this is for all the marbles.
A?
So you're going with people with celiac disease avoiding gluten.
Yes.
And that is going to be incorrect.
This
So
is
Adam...
bullshit.
Adam can get a point that's not going to matter because he cannot win this game.
No, I cannot.
You've got people without celiac disease avoiding gluten, persons who assess gluten intolerance, persons who alienate gluten-free beer.
I'm going to go with persons without. I'm going to go with whatever option B was.
And you would be correct. People without celiac disease avoiding gluten. So, good job.
So,
True acronym. I learned that today.
Second place.
Yes, so that ends the quiz.
Hey, hold on.
Oh, wait, what?
So I can give you what the acronym PAWG stands for. Fat ass white girls.
All right.
I get a point.
Okay, you can get a point.
I feel like we've all lost something today.
That's fine. All right, so in third place, with 3 1/10 points, and that was one point that he gave himself as Steve.
Yeah.
So we're gonna let him have it for the fat ass white girl comment. 3 1/10 points. Steve in third place. Adam in second place with 5. And even though he missed a few, Doug, you are the winner with 7 points. So you have won the Sam gluten-free master quiz. So you get to retain rights to your brewery. You don't have to chug a Hurricane beer. And now you own Ohio River Boulevard in all of Emsworth.
And he's the master of episode 60.
And you are the master of episode 60. So you just cleaned up, my friend.
This is all going on the resume.
You've bet the house and it has paid dividends.
It says here you've been the master of episode 60 since 2018.
That's correct.
All right, so the quiz has ended, but the show has not, because we are still enjoying the AleAuroch Amber from AleAuroch.
Yep.
That makes sense.
I know, imagine that. And we got to give our final thoughts on this beer, and then let's put them on the podium, boys. So, Steve, why don't you go first as our Yuengling connoisseur? I know you said that you thought this was a little bit better, but after it warmed up a little bit and you drank your whole glass there, what are your final thoughts?
It's really enjoyable, and like every other beer tonight, it's super sessionable. I don't necessarily think I'd have it out at a tailgate because it's a little darker, a little more caramelly. It's not refreshing in that way. It's much more of a wind-down beer for me. But, yeah, no, definitely enjoy it more than Yuengling.
Adam?
So I am no longer enjoying this beer. And there's one important reason why. My glass is empty, so I'm not able to enjoy it anymore. So while I did have beer in the glass, I did enjoy it. I did like it. I still believe that this is an evening on the back porch kind of beer. This is definitely one you crack when the sun is going down. You can sit, you can relax with this beer. I really liked it, and I would be much more willing to have another one than honestly a Yuengling. And I'm a Yuengling fan, so that's some high praise, and I don't say that lightly.
Excellent. Well, I have to say, I am also a Yuengling fan. Probably of the three of us, I'm probably the biggest Yuengling fan. I love Yuengling. It's a great beer. And, the AleAuroch Amber is also a great beer. And I'm not just saying this because we were sitting at the brewery and one of the co-owners is right to my right. But I really do like it. I think it has more flavor. It's got a lot of character. It's very well balanced. Some great malt flavor. And it's so drinkable. And, I like it a lot. That's all I have to say about that. Great beer.
For us, that's one of the biggest compliments because we want to bring people back to the table to have a beer that they enjoy, something they can share with friends. And so all of our beers are sessionable, but that's intentional. And all of our beers are flavorful. And we want people to, whether you're a fan of the blonde, fan of the session, fan of the amber, it doesn't matter. As long as you can find something that you can enjoy and something you can share with friends, that's something we're most motivated by. And so they all have that, they all share the thread of being naturally gluten-free and being brewed with millet and quinoa and being brewed sessionably. But they all have something that stands out that defines them and makes them a little bit of a different beer. And so if someone's out there and wanting to try one, hope you try them all. But there's definitely something that we brew that's out there for everybody.
Great.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. So we'll head to the podium.
Yes.
Scoot on over there.
So at this point, Doug, if you don't know, we're going to take your 3 beers and we're going to put them all up against each other and give one a bronze, give one a silver, and give one a gold.
I'll fight to the death.
And then we'll give you that chance at the end. Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. Who wants to start? I'll start. I don't give a shit.
Okay, then. All right, go for it. No one's stopping you.
I always try to go early because I got to do the social media stuff at the end.
Oh, that's right. No
You
one
don't
talk.
want to Steve overload.
Yeah,
That's
you don't
right.
want to talk too long.
Too much Steve overload.
A Steve overload.
Yeah. So the bronze I'm going to give to the amber. I like the beer, and like I already said, I do like it more than the Yingling, but it's still kind of that amber caramelly flavor that's not my favorite thing in the world. But I still like this way more than a lot of other lagers we drink on this show. Vienna lager, lager backbone lager, whatever the hell that was.
Vienna lager, Vienna lager. The obnoxious name.
Jerk off naming convention. The silver I'm going to give to the Session IPA. I like that a lot too, and it definitely satisfies that kind of gateway IPA level for people. I guess I would kind of enjoy something a little more hoppy. I did like it a lot, and I do find it refreshing, so also a very good beer. But the gold I'm going to give to the blonde. That was super, super refreshing, and it just had that nice citrus notes about it. And it also was, like all the other beers, super crushable. So, yeah, hard to pick between the 3, but that's how I'm going.
So I'll jump in next. And bottom line, it seems to me like it doesn't come down to quality between the 3 beers. It essentially comes down to what kind of styles do I prefer with this ranking. All 3 beers, they all have their positive attributes. They all have good qualities, and they're all good beers. So essentially what it comes down to is what kind of styles do I like? Is how this is going to come into play. So for me, the bronze is going to go to the Session IPA. It certainly has its positive qualities. I like the fact that it got the hell out of the way when it was supposed to, but it still presented itself as an IPA. It was an IPA through and through, but it wasn't obnoxious and wasn't, a hopsecutioner or anything like that. It was very good for what it was supposed to be, and I appreciate that. In the silver medal position, I am going to go with the Amber Ale. That is a very, very good beer. Like I said, maybe 5 minutes ago, that's a good back porch beer. It's got a good flavor to it. It's got a good mouthfeel to it. I like it. But it came up against that blonde ale, which I can 100% understand why it is one of the flagships of this brewery. That is a very good beer, very sessionable, very drinkable, very light, very crisp. It's checking boxes left and right. And to me, that puts that in the gold medal position, hands down. That's it.
All right,
Sam,
my turn. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because you guys pretty much said all that there is to be said. So this third place position might come as a little surprise to some, but I'm actually putting the Session IPA there myself.
Really?
Wow.
I know, right? And nothing against it. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. As a hophead, if I have to put one down there, I'm putting this because I want a little more hop flavor in my beer, but still very good. I mean, very drinkable. I really enjoyed it. The silver and the gold are kind of a toss-up for me, but because they were both so good. But I liked the blonde a little bit better. So with that, the amber is actually going to go into second place. I thought the amber had the most flavor of all the beers, and it was very well balanced and had this malty richness to it that I really enjoyed. But I got to go with the blonde first because there was just so much coriander and sweetness and great drinkability to that, and let's just let it be known. I challenge any brewery that's out there that makes a blonde to try to get that beer on this show and to get me to put it in first place again, because this is probably going to be the first time I ever put a blonde, which is one of my least favorite styles of beer, in first place. But this one was great. It's crushable, it's drinkable, and I really, really like the flavor of it.
All right. So now we turn it to Doug. Rank your babies.
That's a great question. Number one would be my dog Beckley. Number two, my wife Amy. Number three,
Oh boy.
just kidding. My wife Amy is definitely number one. But man, it's really tough. And as I sit here, people always ask Ryan, "What's your favorite beer?" And he has a ranking system because he used to be able to drink all these different barley-based craft beers and all these different beers, and so there's a flavor that he's chasing that is always there. And for me, when we brew a different style of beer, there's something that he's chasing. And for me, when it comes to the different beers we brew, a lot of times it's the first time I've ever had that style. But I thought you guys all gave great arguments and great explanations, and certainly we'll take all of that as feedback. But I actually think I mimic Sam the most in this regard. And for me, the Session IPA is one of my favorite beers because I think it is very difficult to blend gluten-free grains with hops. And so I probably drink the most Session IPA, but that said, the amber and the blonde technically are probably our superior styles. And so the flavor of the amber and the different malted grains that we get from grouse really shine in the amber. And so, and with the blonde, the coriander and the different citrus flavors definitely accentuate the style the most. And so I'd have to go bronze Session IPA, silver amber, and gold blonde.
Oh, you got it right too.
Yeah.
Sounds like me. All right.
All right. Well, with that, if you want to find us on social media, all you got to do is search Hop Nation USA, and that'll get you Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to listen to brand new episodes of the Hop Nation USA podcast every Friday, like you should, then search Hop Nation USA on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and Google Music Play. And if you're on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review because, why, Adam?
Well, we are a 6-star show, but they only let us use 5.
That's very, very true. But those 5 stars help us grow, and they help us get to a bigger audience. And if you're looking for anything else, just visit hopnationusa.com for features and reviews you won't find anywhere else. With that, I'm going to give it back to Doug. Tell us about where people can find AleAuroch, where people can find you at events.
Anything you want to promote, pretty much.
Yeah.
And now is the opportunity.
Now's your time. Plug away.
Well, yeah, Steve. So I guess I should say, if you can't find us at your local bar, restaurant, bottle shop, beer distributor, grocery store, tell the manager, tell whoever's involved with buying beer that you want AleAuroch Brewing Company and that you want a great tasting, naturally gluten-free beer. You can check us out online at www.aurochsbrewing, Aurochsbrewing.com, or check us out on all the social media nonsense at AleAuroch Brewing Company on Twitter and Instagram, or at AleAuroch Brewing Company at Facebook. On Facebook. Are you on or at Facebook?
With Facebook?
We're on
Yeah.
Facebook. We're in unison with Facebook.
Right. You're
All right. Well, Doug, can't thank you enough for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. This is very informational. Loved the opportunity to come out here, drink some of your beer, learn more about gluten-free brewing. And I just have to say, to all the listeners out here, I mean, these beers, it's easy for us to rate them against one another, and it's, helps that we're at the brewery with one of the owners. But at the same time, I mean, I think I speak for everyone when I say these beers hold up against some of the best that Pittsburgh has to offer. We're not just saying that because we're here on the show. I mean, these are great beers. If you haven't checked out AleAuroch's beer, check it out. Check out the brewery. It's on Ohio River Boulevard in Emsworth, PA.
10 minutes outside of Pittsburgh.
10 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. What are your hours, Doug? So if somebody does want to come down to the brewery and taste all this delicious beer, when should they do it?
Well, check out the website because the hours sometimes tend to be flexible, but we're always open Saturdays from noon to 6. We're looking at bringing back our traditional tasting room hours and our traditional tasting room. So visit the website, but we can always be here from noon to 6 on Saturdays.
That's great. And like Sam, you already made an allusion to this, but you said if you want to see how these beers hold up against other Pittsburgh beers, come to Brews of the Berg.
Beers of the Berg.
Beers of the Berg.
Damn it, dummies. Yeah, Beers of the Berg, that one. AleAuroch is going to be there.
They will.
So you can do it yourself. You can taste test Aurochs against the rest of the Pittsburgh beers.
That is true. June 2nd at the Cary Furnace. Limited tickets remain. Very limited tickets remain.
Be there or be square.
Well, with that dated-ass reference, I think that's about it for episode 60. Doug, thank you again for being on the show. Adam, thank you for that reference. Steve, thanks for drinking everything. We'll see you next week.
Thanks to fat-ass white girls.
And everybody else, happy drinking. We'll see you next week.